The initial phase of the tennis serve is known as the loading phase. Within the first phase, the serving arm or forearm moves and from an anterior position to posterior and side position to the trunk. This action has very close connection to the bent knee position, in which you'll see both players in the following. Elastic or potential energy is stored within this phase along the body. This includes action and reaction where their feet are planted against the floor, as well as arms outstretched, here and here. To maximise power in the serve, both players flex their knees with their arms outstretched, as seen here and here. The stretch of the arms at these points are then further maximised through the vigorous leg drive, which essentially positions the racket down and behind or away from the body. This prepares for the drive to the ball. As seen, the club player's bent knee position is a lot less flexed to that of the elite tennis player. This could be due to experience and not generating enough power behind the ball. As both players bend their knees, they generate a higher overall force production through a push-like motion. This motion then allows all joints in the kinetic chain or the lower body to move and extend simultaneously in a single movement, as seen here and here. It's at this point that the trunk and upper body moves at an angle, thus producing angular velocity when moving into phase 3. The angular velocity is the rate of change of angle within both players' positions. Therefore, as seen with their arms outstretched and a higher angular velocity of the trunk and hips moving from the backswing to the forward swing phase, the faster the racket will travel, thus producing overall speed and accuracy. So as you can see, studies show that angles of backward rotation of both the pelvis and the trunk are optimal around 50 to 60 degrees. For the pelvis angular rotation and trunk, however, it is more optimal around 30 to 40 degrees. Thus, the advanced player has his angle or angular velocity and rotation in that forward swing phase at 41 degrees, while the less advanced club player evidently has their degrees at 52 in angular velocity. That is relative to the wrist and the front shoulder. When looking at the forward swing position when both players come into contact with the ball, the rotation of the pelvis relative to the trunk should be around 30 to 40 degrees. That has deemed to be at its optimum. And as seen at this point, coming into contact with the ball, the elite player is at 45 degrees, so that's just a little bit above what is deemed optimal for angular velocity. And at this point, the club player is around 55 degrees for angular velocity. The angles of the body moving into the forward swing are further enhanced by the bent knee position with feet flat on the court, as you can see here and here on both players. This relates to Newton's law: for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. So within this phase, both players are conserving their potential energy. As both players move out of the bent knee position, the forces caused by both the knees and the feet against the court have created that equal and opposite reaction in a forward angular motion, as seen here. The back is therefore the main driver, as you will see in the next phase of the tennis serve. This further increases speed and angular velocity, as we just looked at, behind the ball for both players. Elliott 2006 states that the key to recovery of this elastic or potential energy within the muscles is the timing between the shorten and stretch phase of the motion. So for both players to produce a higher overall force They spend only a very short time in the bent knee backswing position and then move swiftly to the forward swing position of the stroke production. However, as opposed to the elite player, more time is spent in that forward motion, thus the ball is hit later. As seen when moving from the last phase to now the forward swing or late cocking phase of the serve, both players transfer their weight swiftly between that push phase of the legs that we've seen here and here to propel them off of the floor, and the forward movements of the arms and the shoulders. This thus maximises their potential energy through the kinetic chain, that being lower and upper body extremities, to produce a higher overall force and velocity on racket to ball contact. As the service arm comes forward, a shoulder over shoulder action occurs. So you can see this here in the elite player, where one shoulder, being the serving shoulder, will move over the top of that forward arm. This also occurs here in our advanced club player. This is also known as a throw-like action of the arm and the service racket. So as you can see, there is a real flick of that arm and the wrist, thus producing a throw-like motion. The throw-like motion happens sequentially, one movement after the other. As seen, the movement begins at the shoulder, so meaning here and here, where it then extends, as you can see in that slight motion there, while the elbow is still slightly flexed. So this occurs at these points here. Later in this throw-like movement or action, the arm extends with forward rotation of the trunk, and finally the extension velocity of the hand or flick of the wrist, which increases significantly, thus producing in a higher racket velocity and ball release. So as you can see, look for the flick of the wrist in both players. This occurs more so with the advanced elite player than it does with the tennis player, with the club tennis player. The production of this movement results in forward angular velocity, bringing the elbow, trunk and hips closer together, as seen here, and more specifically for the elite player here. As these limbs come closer together, the moment of inertia is decreased. The moment of inertia is described as the propensity for masses or objects with inertia, which are at a distance from the centre of rotation, to resist changes in their state of motion. Therefore, the centre of rotation for both players being their hips, this therefore decreases their moment of inertia as they increase the forward swing and overall speed of the racket. The last phase of the tennis serve is acceleration and follow through. Force equals mass times acceleration. Thus, to accelerate the object, or in this case the tennis ball, a large force must be applied. As seen in this phase, both players attempt to contact the ball at the highest point. Evidently, the elite player will make contact with the ball at its highest point, while the advanced club player hits it a little later. Within this phase, the point of contact is crucial for the projectile motion and trajectory of the ball. Projectile motion is the motion of an object projected at an angle into the air. The trajectory is solely influenced by projection speed, such as the racket against the ball, the projection angle at which the ball was contacted at, and the relative height of projection. In the tennis serve, gravity clearly accelerates the ball toward the ground. However, as the tennis serve requires the ball to land in the service box on the opposing side of the net, it is thus, as seen by both players at these points, making contact at the highest point will allow for the optimal flight path and trajectory of the ball between 30 and 35 degrees, thus maximising horizontal and vertical velocity. There is an obvious need to apply the greatest impulses in a very short amount of time by increasing the cumulative forces prior to contact so that accelerations are greater over the short time intervals. Thus, as the elite player moves into the throw-like motion of the forward swing, he is able to apply greater force impulse on the ball, thus producing the impulse-momentum relationship for a greater overall force and speed of the ball. When moving into the follow-through phase, or the final phase, the foot provides a propulsive impulse where the players push backward with the front grounded foot to move quickly into the court, ready for the return hit. So this can be seen at this point here, and on the elite player at this point here. So as you can see, when they move forward, there is a propulsive impulse which pushes them into the court, ready to return. So as seen there and there at that point. Slow motion and full speed of both tennis serves.